You probably know that anxiety disorders are more common in autistic adults, like you and me, than in our allistic peers. And that's because anxiety affects up to 50% of those of us on the spectrum. Now, in this video, I will share with you the 28 signs of anxiety in autistic adults. So let's get started. Hey, Define Yourselfers, I am the Confident Autistic from theconfidentautistic.com. If this is your first time watching a video of mine, welcome. I truly appreciate you taking time to watch one of my videos, and I hope you will look around my channel and find more videos that you enjoy. I'm an autistic adult, late diagnosed, a multi-certified life coach, and an advocate for autistic adults who is on a mission to empower you to embrace autism confidently. Show your support for my mission by liking, commenting, and sharing this video. But the best way you can show your support for the mission and the work that I'm doing is by subscribing to the channel. And when you subscribe, do not forget to click the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos and when I go live with my weekly Q&A live stream. Now, before we get into the 28 signs of anxiety in autistic adults, there's a couple of things I'd like to point out. The first is no one needs to have all 28 of these signs to be experiencing anxiety in their life. In fact, I don't think anyone does have all 28 of them, at least not at the same time. You may only have a few of these. You may have several. It does not matter. Nor should this video be used to diagnose yourself that you have an anxiety disorder. That can only be done by a professional. The purpose of this video is for you to be aware that, hey, these things are going on in my life. Maybe I'm anxious about something. And then go further down the road by trying to figure out what's causing your anxiety and figuring out a way to get through that anxiety. And sometimes that will involve some help, whether it be from a support group or a professional such as a counselor, a psychiatrist, psychologist, etc. So this video is basically for you to be aware of some of the things or signs that you may be experiencing anxiety so you can kind of identify, hey, this is going on in my life, and take the appropriate action and or get the help that's needed so you can work through your anxiety and return to a less anxious state in your life. Now that we went through that little disclaimer, let's get into the 28 signs of anxiety in autistic adults. And the first sign is struggling with sleep. Although many of us on the spectrum, which is estimated 50 to 80% of us fall in this category, struggle with sleep issues. An increased struggle with sleep may indicate that you are experiencing anxiety. Our struggles with sleep when anxious may be caused by our inability to relax and maintain a healthy sleep cycle because we're anxious about something, we're worried about something, and that can disrupt anyone's sleep cycle, whether you're autistic or allistic. The second sign that we may be experiencing anxiety is an increased need to plan. Now, planning is common activity many autistic adults do to develop routines and to create predictability in our lives. I mean, I know, I'm speaking for myself here, and I'm sure others are on the same page. I love routines and I love predictability. When I don't have a routine and predictability, that causes me anxiety. But so we normally do those things. But if we start noticing an increase in our planning, that may be a sign that we are experiencing anxiety. Now, when anxious, autistic adults may engage in overplanning or excessive preparation to regain a sense of control over uncertain or overwhelming situations. So, in other words, the planning that we're doing, excessive planning, that's one of our coping mechanisms when we are feeling anxious. And we don't just sit back and say, hey, that coping mechanism is going to take care of it. We still may need to identify what's causing us anxiety and addressing the problem. The third sign that we would like to talk about today are meltdowns. Now, if you're not familiar with the term meltdown, allow me to quickly give you an overview of what that is. A meltdown is a loss of control where an autistic adult like you and me may express intense distress through crying, yelling, lashing out, shutting down, or other behaviors due to feelings completely overwhelmed and a feeling that we are unable to cope with the situation that we're in. Now, it is not uncommon to experience an increase in meltdowns when anxious. Anxiety exasperates sensory, emotional, and cognitive challenges that are already present in autism for us autistic adults. The fourth sign or trait that we may exhibit during times of anxiousness is perfectionism. Now, perfectionism is an intense desire to do everything just right and achieve flawlessness, often leading to excessive self-criticism. So if we're doing this is not good for us. If we're too self-critical, we're going to be tearing ourselves down, and that damages our self-esteem and self-confidence. Now, what causes us to engage in perfectionism? Perfectionism is a tough word when we are dealing with anxiety. Well, autistic adults may use perfectionism as a coping mechanism, again, another coping mechanism, to manage feelings of uncertainty, overwhelm, and a lack of control that we may feel when we're anxious. Again, coping mechanisms are good. Coping mechanisms are good, but we also need to identify the source of the problem, why we're feeling anxious, and do something to fix it. But in the meantime, in the interim, having a coping mechanism is a fix. It's like putting a band-aid on a problem until we can get to the doctor and get the problem properly resolved. Now, the fifth item on our list is an increased reliance on routine. Now, we talked a little bit routine earlier, but let's go a little bit deeper into this. Routines are very common in the autistic community. Routines help us manage life and provide us with the predictability we often need to stay self-regulated. However, if we're craving routines more than usual, then we may be experiencing anxiety in our lives. I love routines, and and I know that when I'm anxious, I want more routine because I need that stability in my life to counteract as a coping mechanism to my anxiety. I also have noticed when I don't stick to routines, my wife noticed this about me too. When I don't have a routine and I'm not doing my routine, I experience more anxiety. So routines are very important. And if you are noticing you need more routines, um, even if you're having routine, engaged in routines, that may be a sign you're anxious. And if you don't have routines, that may be a cause that you're having anxiety. So it could be kind of a two-sided coin there. Now, routines are used as a way of managing uncertainty, fear, failure, and sensory input when we are going through anxiety. Now, the sixth item on our list is echolalia. If you're not familiar with that term, allow me to give you a brief explanation of what that is. Echolalia is the repetition of words, phrases, or sentences, either immediately after hearing them or later on, which is called delayed echolalia. Like if I would say, and that's the winner, that was Jack Buck's sign-off call when the St. Louis Cardinals won a baseball game. I'm originally from St. Louis, and if I was to say, "Oh, and that's the winner," right after he said it on TV or radio, actually he did the radio side, then that would be an example echolalia. I heard something and I immediately repeated it. Or later on in the day, I say, "And that's the winner," for no apparent reason. That's delayed echolalia. Now, we engage in echolalia as a coping mechanism. Again, another coping mechanism, which most, if not all of these signs that I'm sharing with you today are coping mechanisms that we are engaging in when we're feeling anxiety. So we engage in echolalia as a coping mechanism to self-regulate ourselves, to communicate how we feel to ourselves or others, or to manage overwhelming emotions when we are anxious. The seventh item on our list of signs that we may be, battling anxious feelings and tendencies is when we struggle to make a decision. Now, it's not uncommon for us autistics to struggle with decision making. However, a noticeable increase in making a decision can be a sign of anxiety. Autistic adults like you and me may struggle with decision making when anxious due to a communication or combination, that is, of cognitive, emotional, and sensory factors that are heightened by both anxiety and our native autism. Now I'd like to talk about avoidance. This is something else we do when we are in a state of anxiety. Avoidance is when an autistic adult actively resists or escapes everyday requests and expectations. Now, avoidance of tasks, places, people, or situations are not uncommon when we are experiencing anxiety, as avoidance is a way that we manage overwhelming feelings or sensory overload, which can be present when we are going through anxiety. Then there's the increased difficulty with demands. This goes along with avoidance, okay? So they kind of go together. So let's talk about our increased difficulties with demand. During times of anxiety, autistic adults may experience heightened difficulty with demands due to a combination of neurological, sensory, and cognitive factors that interact with our anxiety. Now, this increased difficulty with demands combined with anxiety can lead to demand avoidance in autistic adults, often manifesting in a behavioral profile called pathological demand avoidance. Pathological demand avoidance, which is PDA. I did a video series on PDA, and I'm providing a link to that in the video description. Just scroll through there and look for mentioned links. And it's right now in the upper right hand corner of the screen on most devices that you're watching this video on currently. Now, the 10th item of our 28 focuses on our difficulties with memory. So pay real close attention because you want to remember this. That's a little joke. It's okay to laugh. And if you don't laugh, it's okay as well. Now, struggles with memory, including remembering things that used to be easy for you to remember, may be a sign that you're battling anxiety in your life as an autistic adult. Experiencing difficulties with memory or complete memory loss is due to interactions between anxiety, cognitive processing, and the unique neurological features of autism that you and I live with on a daily basis. So, memory concerns, I know a lot of people, when we start having memory concerns, this happened to me, okay? I'm going through anxiety in my life. Boy, am I. Okay, I've talked about this in other videos, and it makes sense. I mean, my wife has stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. It's been almost 4 years since the diagnosis. It's a very anxious time because I know the odds are against it being cured, and the odds are in favor that it's going to get worse over time, and I may lose my wife before I die. So there's a lot of anxiety in my life, a lot of uncertainty. Okay, so I really am the demographic for anxiety. Okay, so I just it is me. And I started having trouble remembering things that I used to be able to do, or just remembering anything. Like I would, like last night, I opened up my phone. I wanted to go look up something, and I got into Google, and I was going to type it in, right? And I was like, what was I going to look for? And about 4 hours later, I figured it out. And that scared me when it first started happening because I thought I'm getting dementia, Alzheimer's. My dad died from well, not he did not die from it. When he died, he was in sundowners, which is a form of dementia where you do okay during the day, but later in the day, it goes right into like Alzheimer's or dementia. And so I was scared about this, but I realized it's not dementia, it's not Alzheimer's. It has to do with anxiety. This is why it's really important, and I'm going to get back to the list in a moment. But this is why it's so important that when we have these symptoms, we don't want to overly self diagnose. That this could be a warning sign This memory thing could be a warning sign that we're experiencing anxiety, but it could be other things. So I'll mention later in this video again, but I'm going to mention it now that, if you're concerned, it wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion from somebody who knows what they're doing, like a physician, a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is, yes, memory loss can be a sign of anxiety, and more than likely it is. But it can also be something else, just like all these signs that I'm sharing with you today. They could be something else. So don't go to the quick answer unless it really makes sense. And it is best really to get professional support on this, and instead of trying to self-diagnose yourself, because what if it is not anxiety, or it's anxiety as well as dementia? You want to get on board and resolve that problem sooner rather than later. Okay, I'm off my little soapbox here. I hope it was an important point that I made to you, but we're going to move on with the list. And the next list is irritability, which my last little soapbox could have caused you some irritability as you're watching this video. But for us autistics, a noticeable increase in being moody, cranky, or easily being irritated by others may be a sign you are experiencing anxiety in your life. Because autistic adults may be more irritable due to sensory sensitivities, difficulties for emotional regulation, that is, and challenges in coping with stress. All three of these things, the sensory sensitivities can be increased. Difficulties, emotional regulation can be more difficult, and coping with stress can be very hard when we're also battling anxiety. And this can be released by us being irritable to people. And then, obviously, when we're irritable, later we may regret saying something, and it can cause hurt feelings, damage relationships, friendships, whatever. So, this is a really important sign to watch out for. If we're getting more irritable, we really got to find out what it is. It may be anxiety, it may be something else, but we got to look into that. So, if you're feeling more irritable, or people are telling you you seem to be more irritable than normal, don't ignore it. It's something I think you should look into. I know it would be for me, but I've always been a very irritable person, to be honest about it. I can be a real jerk at times. I'm aware of it, so I'm trying to decrease that, but it is a part of who I am. An increased or decreased sensory difficulties can be a sign that we are dealing with anxiety as we live life on the spectrum. Now, most autistic adults have some form of sensory struggles or sensitivities. Either we are sensory seeking or avoiding sensory exposure due to the risk of experiencing sensory overload. For me, my sensory overload points, I mentioned in other videos, I'm going to mention them again briefly, is noise and visual brightness and visual clutter. Too many things around me, it causes me to have sensory overload. But then there are times that we are sensory seeking. Like maybe I want to, feel the sensation of nice warm water down my back. So I take 2 or 3 showers during the day, whatever it is. But if we notice there's a change in our level of sensory sensitivities, let's say we're sensory seeking more than we ever did before, or we're sensory seeking and we never done that before, or we're experiencing sensory overload a lot quicker and a lot more frequently than we did prior, than maybe, a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, a year ago, we may be feeling some anxiety in our life. I know over the last almost 4 years with my wife's cancer battle, I have been having more trouble with sensory overload. And I also notice that when my anxiety level increases, which it does at times with what's going on in our lives, I become sensory seeking. So I notice those changes in myself. And you notice something like that, you may be battling some anxiety. Now, sensory difficulties can become more pronounced. This is important, kind of what I've been talking about here. Sensory difficulties can become more pronounced when we are experiencing anxiety due to the way both anxiety and sensory processing work in our brains. Another thing that can happen when we're on that anxiety journey is We may experience slower processing speed. Now, we're not computers, we're human beings. When you think of the word processing, sometimes you think of a computer, but we do have to process stuff. As autistics, we're always processing the things that we experience, sensations, whatever. And so that's not unusual for us. But it is not uncommon for us autistics to take a bit longer to process information than our allistic peers. Like I mentioned, we may take a little bit longer to process our emotions, our feelings, or what somebody says to us. That's normal for us, nothing to worry about. However, if it seems that it is taking longer for you or me to process information, anxiety may be the contributing factor to why your processing seems to be a little bit slower than it was before. Now, we experience slower processing speeds when anxious due to a combination of factors, including sensory overload and cognitive load, executive functioning challenges, difficulty shifting our focus from one subject to another, one event to another, could be social processing issues. Emotional regulation could also cause us, may take longer for us to regulate our emotions when we're battling anxiety. And we could also be experiencing what's called the fight or flight response. And when that gets in our way, we want to fight and we don't know what to do. That's going to slow down our processing of whatever is being whatever we're sensing around us, whether it be somebody's a conversation, noise, sight, smell, whatever, you know. And of course, difficulties with self-regulation can be an obstacle that will slow down our processing of information that we are gathering from any of our senses. Now, the next one on the list is called lining things up. And when you think of lining things up, and when we hear that phrase, in the context of autism, we often think of a child lining up his or her toys. But in the world of autism for adults, lining things up refers to a repetitive behavior where we meticulously arrange objects in a straight line or specific pattern, often with a focus on symmetry and order. Now, I've done this all through my life, okay? And I always thought I did this for the reason because my dad was a mechanical engineer, and engineers like things being very precise, okay? So I thought I inherited it from him. Turns out that's part of my autism. I like things being very organized, symmetrical. Sometimes I drive my wife up a wall. There's a proper way to hang a shirt on a hanger and to put it in the closet. And it drives me batty. She doesn't always do that. There's a proper way to put toilet paper on the toilet paper roll. Again, it has to be the right way. Otherwise, I become a little bit miscabulated. So, yeah, this can happen. And this is not uncommon that we do line things up. But if we start doing this more intensely, we may have a problem. As autistic adults, we may place items like books, toys, or even utensils in precise alignment, sometimes even adjusting them slightly to achieve perfect alignment. Lining things up is a form of stimulating, or of stimming that is, which is self-stimulation behavior that can be calming for individuals on the autism spectrum. We have a DVD collection out there, and it we need a bigger case for it. Okay, so DVDs are like two rows back, and then we get some out, and we don't put things back in the right, and it's a big pile of a mess right now, and I don't like looking at it because it drives me up a wall, and I gotta get over there. I gotta organize those because it's driving me batty. And that's one of the things. Everything has to be organized. We have TV trays between my chair and my wife's chair. And there's four of them. They have to be lined up exactly for me. I have to do these things. And I noticed that's been increasing, that need to line things up and organize things and to have them in a particular order. I have binders off camera here that has documents in it from past years of taxes because you got to save everything for 7 years. So I'm putting them in a color order where it makes a rainbow. It has to be in this order, otherwise I become miscabulated. I don't know why, but it's just me. Anyway, when we notice we are lining things up more than usual, which I think I'm in that category, we may be feeling anxious. Now, autistic adults may line things up when feeling anxious as, once again, a coping mechanism. Remember, when we start having these coping mechanisms, and we need to find out what we're trying to cope with. And if it's anxiety, we need to address that. It could be something else, but in this video, we're talking about anxiety. Now, this type of behavior, which is, lining things up, is often referred to as stimming. This is known as stimming, which is self-regulatory behavior. I mentioned that a few moments ago. And it can serve several purposes in the context of anxiety or stress. Now we're halfway through all this. We're halfway there. We made it this far, and I appreciate you making it to this point of the video. We're on the final half. We're gonna make it. All right. Let's go to item number 15 on our list, which is regression, also known as losing the ability to do what we were once able to do. Now, normally, as autistic adults, we do not regress or lose any abilities we achieved despite the challenges of our autism. However, when we do start to regress or start losing abilities to do things that we were able to do just a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, or maybe a year ago, this may be a sign of anxiety in our lives. And if it isn't, something else is bothering us, and we need to find out what that is. And again, that may require a conversation with somebody who specializes in autism and maybe regression and all, like a counselor, or a psychiatrist, a psychologist. Now, this regression, or the loss of our abilities to do tests that we've done before, may be caused by a combination of factors related to how anxiety affects both the neurological and physiological aspects of our functioning abilities. This can be attributed to feelings of being overwhelmed, along with sensory sensitivities, difficulties with cognitive flexibility, executive functioning challenges, social anxiety, and communication difficulties, impaired emotional regulations, a reduction of motivation or energy, hyperfocus and inflexibility, and negative feedback loops. All of these things can contribute to us experiencing regression or losing the ability to do what we once were able to do. The next item on our list are shutdowns. Now, shutdown occurs when we as autistic adults withdraw from our surroundings and become unresponsive due to an overwhelming sensory, emotional, or cognitive input. Now, not all shutdowns indicate we are experiencing anxiety, but some do. And that's why I have it in this list, because some do. And shutdowns can be caused for other reasons. I mentioned some a moment ago. But anxiety could be one of these reasons. Shutdowns may be triggered by heightened anxiety. That's why I did mention this in this list. And are caused by the unique ways that our brains process sensory input, emotional and social interactions. We get overwhelmed and we go, okay, enough, and I'm going to shut down. I do that at times. It drives my wife nuts, but I do that. Number 17 is kind of like a mystery item. And I say this because it is experiencing unexplainable pain. Now, when we start experiencing pain, we often can identify it. Like, I have pain right now on my elbow. I've overused this elbow, so I know that causes the pain. I have a little pain in this wrist right here because my cat scratched it, okay? But if I'm having pain somewhere else in my body and I cannot identify what is causing it or why I have that pain, that's called unexplained pain. And that may be a sign of anxiety. Now, it could be something else too, okay? I got a real weird pain in my side, my hip here, and it's been hurting for a while. I can't explain why. Maybe that's anxiety. Maybe it's arthritis. Maybe it's something else. Maybe you should get it checked out from the doctor. But let's say, for the sake of argument and for this video, that your unexplained pain is due to anxiety. Let's figure out or find out why anxiety can cause us to experience unexplained pain. We may experience unexplained pain during anxiety as autistic adults due to several interconnected factors related to the neurological and sensory aspects of autism, including sensory sensitivities. We talked about that a little bit earlier. A heightened stress response, or difficulties in pain perception that we have on a normal basis. I know for myself, I am definitely afraid of needles because needles are very, very painful to me. And that might be because of my autism and that I experience pain or perceive pain differently than my wife. Another reason that we may experience some unidentified pain or causes unidentified pain that are related to us experiencing anxiety as autistic adults is could be emotional dysregulation. Our emotions can become dysregulated when we're battling anxiety, which can contribute to us experiencing unexplained pain. Of course, our uh, autonomic nervous system, ANS dysfunction, can contribute to us experiencing unexplainable pain when we're anxious, as well as chronic stress, which we often have chronic stress when we are anxious, as well as fatigue. Often, anxiousness will cause us to be more tired, and then we have trouble sleeping, and that causes more fatigue. It becomes like a vicious cycle, doesn't it? Not to mention our difficulty identifying the source of pain, which is what unidentifiable pain is. I mean, we got pain somewhere, we don't know what's causing it. That is kind of the definition of unidentified pain, uh, because we can identify the source of the pain. The next item on our list is digestive issues. Now, digestive issues such as chronic constipation, abdominal pain, diarrhea, heartburn, bloating, gas, nausea, and difficulty with bowel movements are not uncommon in autistics. However, if you're experiencing digestive issues when you did not before in life, or if your normal digestive issues are getting worse, one cause may be anxiety. However, these symptoms you're feeling, these signs, could be something else. And for that reason, you should not ignore the signs and consider seeing a physician. Because let's say you're having some abdominal pains, cramps, diarrhea, whatever, constipation. It could be anxiety, but it could also be maybe a more serious problem, maybe a kidney issue, maybe your pancreas or your liver is not functioning right, or something else is wrong. And now that's in your mind, you're thinking, oh my gosh, could it be that? That in itself, worrying if it's your kidneys, can cause you more anxiety. Get it, if that's happening, get it checked out. You know, and maybe it is. And that's not always the greatest news. But the earlier you attack something like that, often there's a better chance for a better outcome. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying that from my own personal experience and knowledge of observing life. Okay. But the point is, this can be from anxiety. It could be a health issue. And don't just say, oh, is this anxiety? And ignore the potential. It could be a serious health issue. If you're concerned that it is, please consult a physician and find out for sure, one way or another. I mean, if it is, you can attack it, and if it isn't, then you reduce your anxiety if that was causing you anxiety. Now, autistic adults often experience digestive issues when anxious due to a combination of factors related to the way our bodies, that is, and brains process stress, sensory input, and emotionally regulate our emotions. A change in appetite could indicate that you are battling with anxiety. If your appetite changes, including eating more, which is also known as stress eating less, or any other change in your appetite, including eating only specific foods or a change in what you prefer to eat, that may be a sign that you are experiencing anxiety or feeling anxious in your life. However, it could be something else. And for that reason, you should not ignore the signs and again consider seeing a physician. We may experience changes in appetites when we're anxious as autistic adults due to a combination of sensory sensitivities, emotional regulation difficulties, and physiological responses to anxiety. Increased difficulty with focus and function is something else we may experience when we are dealing with anxiety. Because it's not uncommon, let's start here. It's not uncommon for us as autistic adults to struggle with focus and attention. And that's true for anyone on the spectrum. However, if you notice your focus and ability to pay attention is getting worse, it could be a sign that you are anxious. We may experience difficulties with focus and attention when anxious due to several interconnected that is factors related to how anxiety interacts with the brain and our sensory processing. Our increased difficulty with focus and attention may be caused by an increase in sensory sensitivity or difficulty with filtering information, our executive functioning challenges, our social and emotional stress we're experiencing, the internalized anxiety and the rumination that we experience, and which means we're getting over and over and over on an issue, with so like getting being like a stuck record, which I know the kids are going to say, "What is a stuck record?" Anyway, uh, along with our physical response to stress and our inherent difficulty with task switching. These are all things that can contribute, and mixed in with anxiety can cause us to experience an increased difficulty with focus and attention. And this can be very bad depending on what you're doing. If you're not really focusing, you're driving a car, that can be a really bad thing and costly, because you can be seeing increased insurance rates and have repair bills to pay if not having to buy a new car. Now, the 21st item on our list, which means we're about 3/4 of the way there, 75% done, is an increased difficulty with uncertainty. None of us like, I don't know of a single person on the spectrum that says, I enjoy uncertainty. I crave that. I want more of that in my life. Because it may be a challenge to find anyone on the spectrum that does not struggle with uncertainty. And most of us prefer a routine and the predictability of a routine. So when we experience an increased difficulty with uncertainty, we may be feeling anxious. Autistic adults may experience difficulties with uncertainty because of how we process information, manage sensory experiences, and interact with the world. Another thing that may increase when we're battling anxiety is our stimming activities. Now, stimming, if you're not familiar with the term, is also or refers to self-stimulatory behaviors. And these are repetitive actions that can be common in adults with autism. Now, some common stims include staring, pacing. That was one of my favorites. So I had my incomplete spinal cord injury and I'm not able to pace anymore. But that was one of my favorites. Repetitive body movements, etc. When our stims increase in frequency or intensity, it may be a sign of anxiety. Our increased stimming may be due to several interconnected factors related to how we process information, manage sensory experiences, and interact with the world. Another thing that could increase while we are dealing with anxiety is hyperactivity. Now, hyperactivity in autistic adults refers to excessive physical movement, restlessness, and an inability to sit still, often manifesting as fidgeting, pacing, or talking excessively. When a noticeable increase in hyperactivity behavior occurs, the cause may be anxiety. Our increased hyperactivity when anxious may be caused by the way anxiety affects our nervous system, combined with the sensory processing and emotional regulation challenges often associated with our autism. Now, one thing that we may want to do when we're feeling really anxious is we may want to run away. Now, running away is often referred to as elopement in clinical terms when you talk about autism. And this occurs when we suddenly leave a situation or a safe environment, often appearing as wandering off, and we leave abruptly, which allows us to abruptly change our location or simply withdrawing to a secluded area. Now, our desire to run away or elope when we are anxious is another coping mechanism. We talked about this earlier. This is a coping mechanism in response to sensory overload, emotional distress, or perceived threat. And because all those things can either cause or contribute to our level of anxiety. Now, this behavior, the elopement, is often not about defiance or desire to escape from responsibility, but rather the elopement is a response to overwhelming situations that are either causing or contributing to our anxiety. Now, when you run away, what do you want to run away to? Or why do you want to run away? Because you want to go into hiding. And that's number 25 in our list, hiding. Hiding occurs when we withdraw from people, places, and our society and go to a place where others will not easily find us. There are several reasons why, during times of anxiety, it is not uncommon for us to want to hide or withdraw, including how anxiety interacts with our sensory processing, social experiences, and our coping strategies. Now, when we're hiding, what are we trying to do? We're practicing or engaging in self isolation, which is number 26 on our list, self isolation. Self isolation occurs when we actively and voluntarily withdraw from social interactions by preferring to spend significant time alone. Avoiding small talk or complex social situations is also considered self isolation. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm sure there's others in the spectrum who are like me. I prefer to be alone more than I prefer to be around people. I do crave to be around people. It's so complex for me to understand that. So I do self isolate because I'm more comfortable with that. But if that increases, then for me, that, or if you're like me, and we prefer self isolation, nothing wrong with that overall. I mean, we should interact with other people because there could be some mental health issues with that. But if we notice our self isolation is increasing, that's a sign that we may be experiencing anxiety. And that's something, like I mentioned a moment ago, we need to be cautious about because self isolation, extended self isolation, can lead to some other mental health issues. Now, often we self isolate for several reasons related to our sensory sensitivities, our social communication difficulties, and our challenges in regulating our emotions. Additionally, another sign that we may be battling some anxiety in our life is our inability to mask autistic traits, that is, when this was previously done. Now, if you're not familiar with the term masking, masking is a coping mechanism that autistic adults use to appear non autistic and fit in with the allistics in our society. And we all mask. I mean, we all try to emulate because we want to fit in and we try to hide some of our traits. Like, one of my traits is playing with my needle ball. I no longer, I used to hide those little things. Now I'm proud of it. I take this practically everywhere I go. It doesn't bother me. But the point is, that would be a form of masking. Or maybe one of your masks is echolalia, where you're repeat things or blurt things out. And you're able to hide that. Let's say you are. But now you're not able to. It's harder to do that. That's when the masking becomes more difficult. You're not able to mask. And it's not because you're trying to unmask or trying to just be your authentic self. It is this, I like to try to continue to mask, but I can't. I'm losing it. I'm losing control. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. Now, when we are unable to make or mask in situations that we were once able to mask in, that is a sign that, or a possible sign of anxiety. Our inability to mask our autistic traits when we were able before may be caused by sensory, emotional, or cognitive functions. Now we made it. We made it to the last one. Thank you for hanging in this long in the video. I'm so proud of you. This is self-injury. Now, A self-injury occurs when we bang our head on a surface, bite our hands or arms or fingers, and or pulling on our hair. Although do many autistics do any or all of these behaviors, and some do not do any of them, okay, as part of the autistic traits. If the self-injurious behavior increases, that may be a sign you are experiencing anxiety. So if these traits are normal to you, banging your head, biting your hands or arms or fingers, and pulling at your hair, if that increases, that may be a sign you're experiencing anxiety. Now, autistic adults may be more likely to engage in self-injury when anxious due to a combination of sensory sensitivities, emotional regulation challenges, and communication difficulties. Now, it's important for me to point out at this point that self-injury is different than self-harm. Self-injury, we're just wanting to feel some kind of sensation, maybe we're sensory seeking, and that self-injury is going to fill a sensory need that we have at that moment. Okay, we could get hurt in it, we could get injured, but we're not doing it intentionally to hurt ourselves. Self-hurt or self-harm is something different, like taking a knife and trying to cut yourself or trying to commit suicide or overdose or something. That is self-harm, and if that's going on, that could be a sign of anxiety, but that's also a point that you're going to want to get help. Okay, because you're thinking of harming yourself, please reach out to someone. The best thing you can do here in the United States is to text or call 988 and be connected with a professional who can help you. Or you can chat with them online at 988lifeline.org. Links to that will be in the video description. Now it's your turn. What signs have you noticed when someone who is autistic is anxious? Share those in the comments, or join the conversation in our Facebook group, Autistic Adults Embracing Autism. A link to that group is in the video description, as well as directions on how to get a free gift from my website. Just scroll through the video description and look for resource links to find the links I just mentioned to you and to find out how to get a free gift from my website. Now, I would like to tell you that I would love to respond to every single comment that's posted. Unfortunately, I do not have that kind of time, but I do have time to read each and every one of them, so I truly appreciate your comments. And before we conclude, I'd like to say I know this went long, and I appreciate you hanging in this long. You are a rock star for doing this, okay? You really are. You are amazing, and this means you really want to understand your autism, and you want to embrace your autism with confidence. This is what my mission is, to help you do that. So, until next time, I'm Chris Mitchell, aka The Confident Autistic, reminding you that now is the time for you to start embracing autism confidently. Join me live Thursday nights for The Confident Autistic Live, where I answer your questions, we discuss this week's videos, offer support, and more. The fun starts Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time in the US of A. Be sure to click the bell when you subscribe to the channel to be notified when the party begins.